Hey family, so today I thought I'd bring to you a tutorial on painting Carl from Zombicide, Undead or Alive. It's something I've been wanting to do for quite some time now. A painting tutorial, as you can see in this particular miniature, in typical style from Simon. This is got lots and lots of beautiful detail. I mean, these models really do almost paint themselves, but as always in a painting of miniatures, we need to start with a base coat. Now, rather than going with the normal black or white base coats, what I'm going to do is do a Zenithal base coat, so it gives us a level of that lighting pre-built into the miniature, so that when we apply contrast paints as a translucent layer over the top, it still allows some of that shading to show through, give us a benefit on the final figure. So I'll crack on with that and applying Duncan's method of 2 thin coats. As you can see, I speed this up. I confess I'm not a fast painter, so yeah, I won't bore you with watching every one of my brush strokes. You will see, unfortunately, the focus isn't great. This is my very first time recording a painting tutorial, trying to get to grips with technology. I'm using a mobile phone for the videoing, and yeah, as you can see, it's rather hit and miss. You can see a lot of juddering, stuttering, in and out of focus. And here we go now, we're going in with the second base coat over the miniature. So eventually, this is Carl from Zombicide, Undead or Alive. Absolutely loving the game. I've got all of the zombies now completely painted, from the core box, as well as the single abomination that comes in the core box. Again, would have really liked to have done some painting tutorials for those. But yeah, just really struggled to get around to it, and really wanted to get those painted up. So enjoyed those, but I figured I'd give it a go with the survivors. So please do comment below, let me know if this is something you'd love to see more of, or like to see more of. I'd be more than happy to do some more videos and hopefully get to grips a bit better with positioning and focus and all that jazz. Of course, if you have any tips, then please do comment below. So here we're going in with Cadian flesh tones. What we're going to do now is start to apply the Zenithal undercoat. So this is our second layer. We'll go in and we're going to apply some dry brushing here. So I've got one of Army Painter's masterclass dry brushes. This is the Mighty dry brush. It's quite a large one, but it's good enough for us to bring out detail. And you can see I've swapped the wet palette now for what we call a dry palette. And this is great for just taking the majority of the paint off the brush, and you can see all that wonderful texture on that dry palette. And that just helps just to give you a genuine sense when you apply the brush to the miniature. What is that effect going to look like? So you can see now we go in and we'll start to apply this dry brush. You'll see quite quickly the effects that has. As I mentioned, I am speeding up the actual painting itself. As you can see, the focus is not great, so apologies for that again. Yeah, as I say, if you've got any tips, advice on how best to address the focus, in this instance I've used a Samsung S9 camera. You'll see splash up on a number of occasions throughout this video ManyCam, as the software I'm using to capture the video footage. I mean, the software seems to do a good job. It seems to cope quite well with the capturing of the motion, sort of the manoeuvrability, as it were, when it's on the monitor in real time. It can appear quite juddery, so yeah, you're never quite sure how sort of stuff will turn out. But yeah, I was quite happy with that. So that's the first layer of the Zenithal, and now we're going to go in and we're going to apply a further layer just to capture the higher levels. We'll be using Wraithbone base coat, which of course was Citadel's one of the 2 original base layer colours for the contrast paints when Citadel first introduced them, some I think 4 years ago now, if not more, the other being grey sear. Personally, I quite like the additional level of pop. I know some people aren't massively fans and appreciative of it. They think it can give quite a candy finish, but I think when it's applied in this way, it works quite well personally. Occasionally I'll use grey sear, but much less so. And of course the latest Games Workshop Citadel Contrast Paints are now using white scars, all the more candid, I'm sure some people will say. But I mean, I've used contrast paints when they first came out. For me, they revolutionised the market. They revolutionised painting as a whole. They revolutionised the painting industry from a miniatures perspective, so much so that every other company across the globe is now trying to follow and copy them with varied success. So yeah, the Games Workshop, without a doubt, have set the bar, as they have done with their miniatures for many years. Obviously Games Workshop make their own paints, have done so for a long time. So here I'm just flicking back to the reference image and highlighting what areas I'm going to do now. So I'm going to do his pants, his trousers. So they were a kind of yellowy brown. So yeah, so I'll be going in here using the contrast paint Nazdreg yellow. So that's quite nice. I really liked the Nazdreg yellow. I think it gives you quite a nice yellowy brown, not too vibrant a yellow. When I first started out using yellow with the contrast paints, the main one that I had was the I think it was the Undead yellow, and I found that to be very red yellow, so where it pooled in the recesses, it pooled red, which again was fantastic for particular effects, fantastic for fire. In this case, I really don't want to make Carl look like his pants are on fire. I don't think that's quite the effect I'll go for, so yeah, happy to have Nazdreg instead. So this is Carl, who's a brawler, and his class ability in the game allows him to move 2 zones and attack as a single action, which is great fun. That's what the class brawlers classes are, the new thing they've introduced. And here we're going to be going and applying Black Templar to Carl's boots. Again, Citadel new contrast. Black was Black Legion, but I find that to be a much thicker, heavier bodied black. Use it on occasion, but I must confess, rarely. For me, the purpose, the benefit of using the contrast paints is that translucency and having the undertones coming through. So yeah, that's why I would go for the Templar of the older range. So here, going in to do his leather apron, and of course, what else would you use for the contrast paints other than Snakebite leather? Again, another paint of controversy, this one. I think they changed. There was originally many years ago Snakebite leather in name, and they changed the ingredients as they introduced it to the contrast range, and a lot of people didn't appreciate that. They preferred the original Snakebite leather. for me, I hadn't encountered the original, so yeah, I really like Snakebite leather. Again, there are some people out there that say, well, the total quality is not quite what they're looking for, etc. But yeah, for me, I really like it. I like the, it can give us something of a kind of mottling effect, particularly over those slightly flatter areas. But again, I think that's quite natural for that leather effect. I think it works really well. And yeah, I mean, it's a joy to apply. It goes on nice and easy, as does all the contrast paints. And you can see I'm trying to be a bit careful, not get too much in the areas. You'll see the final step gives us a bit of grace with some of that stuff, but for now we'll try and apply contrast steadily, carefully. As you can see, I'm speeding up these videos. So here, highlighting the next area, which will be his shirt. Now obviously his shirt is white, and I'm not going to be going in with a contrast paint to make it white, but what I will be using is this Apothecary white, and this gives it a grey hue, as well as giving it the recesses, that sense of depth. And I quite like the Apothecary white. It's got a bit of a blue hue to it, but I think it works quite well in the what we're trying to achieve. And then you'll see, in addition to using the contrast paints as my base layers for applying the colorization on my miniatures, what I'll then also do is subsequently go in and also apply shading, using either shading or contrast paints, and also applying highlights as well, just to really add that extra pop to the final effect of the miniature. So we're going in now to do the skin, and of course some may have thought it a bit ironic having gone in with a dark colour and lightened it, considering this is dark skinned miniature, but here I'm using the Darkoath contrast paint, and personally I really like the hue on this one. I think it's great. It's a bit of a reddish tone to it, but I like it. It works well, as you can see there, just picking out some of the shading and the recesses, helping to draw the attention to that detail. And I think it works great as a colour. There's a few of them. So we've got the Darkoath, which is the darker of the three. Fire Slayer, F-Y-R-E, Fire Slayer Flesh, and Gulliman Flesh. Gulliman Flesh tends to be my go-to, but like I say, Darkoath, which you're seeing here, is definitely on the darker shade, and personally I think has worked quite well in this instance, and really helped to bring Carl to life. And you'll see I'll go in after this with a slightly darker brown, just to maintain the consistency of the character. So what I'll be doing here, as you see it, hopefully, is I'm speeding up the actual painting process itself. As I mentioned, I'm not a fast painter, and I'm trying to be careful. And then when I pause or slow down at the end of each of these sessions, just to give you that glimpse as to the progress that's being made step by step by step. So here I'm using Briar Queen Chill, basically a bit of an odd option, but the notion here is to apply an initial blue undercoat hue to the metal that we're going to want to be picked up in the final stages of this miniature. Again, for me personally, I like using metallic paints. There are metallic paints, I enjoy using them, I like the look of them. There are some that obviously prefer not to use them, and that's absolutely fine. Obviously, if you get to high end, you've got the NMM stuff, the non-metal metallic, I think is what it stands for. But the idea is not using the metallic paints, but still giving it that metallic colour at the end. Yeah, very impressive stuff. Certainly for me, in this level of speed-ish painting that I'm applying, is beyond what I'm after in this stage. Maybe when I come onto the bigger abominations and what have you, maybe I'll have to play with that, particularly when we get to the steampunk box sets as part of this Zombicide Undead or Alive. But for now, happy with applying this method, and the idea here is using a blue tone for the silvery metals, because it just applies a colder steel feel to the effect. And if it were gold that I was doing, then I'd be applying a red tone, and just gives it a much warmer effect when the final gold layer goes on over the red. But yeah, I mean, again, for me, I found that works quite well, and applies some really nice effects. So obviously you've got the swords here, the barrel, and some body areas of the sawn-off shotgun, machete, I guess, rather than a sword. And of course his, I'm thinking calipers. I don't think they necessarily are calipers. The tools around his belt, wrenches, perhaps, maybe. It's an interesting character. He's the class of a brawler, and yet to look at him, he would seem to be more of a blacksmith, and therefore maybe more of a townsfolk from the gameplay perspective than a brawler. But yeah, obviously a townsfolk with something of an arsenal, and again, you know, a pistol, not necessarily representative of a brawler, but there you go. It works well. He looks great. So now I'm going in and applying the undertone, the darker shading of the skin, the flesh that I mentioned earlier. So I'm using Cygor Brown. Just make sure I'm pronouncing that correctly. Grunter Fur is the contrast paint there. For those listening, not necessarily looking at my lousy blurred filming on the screen. Yeah, some of these bits were quite atrocious, as you can see. Then occasionally it goes into focus. You go, oh well, I can see what he's doing now. That's useful. But yeah, so applying that shading again, just trying to be careful, just trying to focus on the undercarriage, as it were, of the particular areas. So where the fingers are, giving them that shade just to help them to stand out. Going in around the neck area there, then a little bit up into the actual face and the head, just where those kind of recesses are in the skull, just to give it that extra bit of pop and texture, I guess. Yeah, depth. But yeah, happy that that achieved the result that was set out. There we go. So a bit of a pause. You can see the effects there. And now I'm going to be going in and applying the darker areas, the darker browns. So this is primarily for the shotgun, so this is using Cygor Brown here to go in. So it's quite a rich brown. You can see it there on the wet palette in comparison to the other browns used so far. You can see it there now on the shotgun. It's very dark, very rich. It's not as dark as the original brown range, which was the Wildwood. That was the dark brown in the original contrast range. So yeah, really liking the addition. They've added a few other browns now to the contrast range. I'm really appreciating them. They work really, really well. Much appreciated additional tonal qualities to the paint set. So yeah, just going in, as you can see, just being really careful, just working around the blue that we've applied for the steel metalwork areas, which will be finished off later. Just going in with that tiny little handle piece there between the fingers. And then the other thing I'm doing now is I'm applying, just watering that down a bit, and just going to be applying almost a kind of a bit of a shade. I noticed that on the original graphic there definitely was more sort of a grimy look to the edges of Carl's apron. I just wanted to bring that to life and just add a bit more of a contrast, if you excuse the pun, to his pants or trousers. The edges of the artwork there and around those metal buttons, and then just the apron belt. So yep, that's what that looks like there. And oh yes, whilst I had the Cygor, I just packed it away and then thought, actually, looking at the beard, it isn't black, it is brown. So I went back and just got that Cygor back out just to go around and do the beard area as well. Just get that whilst I had the paint to hand. And yeah, I always find the beards and hair a bit tricky, personally, because naturally hair has a life to it, and it's quite hard to capture that, I find, in painting. Personally, I think it's certainly a challenge. So here, going in and going over the shirt, so now I'm looking at doing some highlighting. So going back in with the Wraithbone, which of course we used for the original highlight in that Zenithal undercoat. But yeah, I didn't want it to be pure white on the shirt. I wanted to have a level of sort of creamy quality, I guess, for lack of a better phrase. Yeah, I didn't want it to be really bright white. I didn't feel it was fitting with the character. He's there with his aprons, he's there with his very much his work clothes. But you can see there with the Apothecary white, it really helps to bring out that tonal quality and that differentiation between the highlights and the shadows in the recesses there, and really help to make that pop and stand out. And yeah, it's just going through, going around now, just applying some very high level highlights, just being just a little careful, a little slow. Again, the level of detail on these miniatures, you don't even have to be that careful. These things really do almost paint themselves when they're this quality. They really are just a joy and a delight to paint, and they look fantastic once they're painted up and they're out there on the table, and you've got them fighting off hordes of zombies. It just adds to the fun. Just fantastic, absolutely love it. There we go. I think we end with a bit of a final glimpse there of those highlights applied. And then moving on to the next layer. So this is going in and just really fine detail, just touching up those string areas on that apron. So going in here with Deathclaw Brown. It's quite a light, almost kind of orangey quality. And just picking out some of those finer details, just trying to give that extra bit of texture and differentiation on some of those bits of the miniature. So even when you are looking at the miniature a good sort of 2 foot away, your eye is able to capture enough of that detail that all these little bits really do stand out. They really do make a difference just on the tabletop. You know, you don't have to get up that close. I mean, as you saw there, I thought that the effect, the value of doing that is very much worthwhile. So now going in with the metal, and for this I've chosen Leadbelcher. So again, didn't want it too bright, didn't want to go for a really bright steel one, something a bit more sort of almost grimy. You know, that's very much in fitting with the game here. These aren't going to be brand new weapons fresh off the shelf. These are going to have been, you know, sat around for a while. This is the 1800s. They're going to be a bit dirty, a bit grimy. And so yeah, you know, just want to try and reflect some of that character, if you will, in what we've got going on here. And again, what I'm doing here is I'm trying to apply this almost as a highlight to some of the these areas, not trying to completely cover up all of the blue. So you'll see here I'll cover up the blade, but that blue will still shine through. You know, I'm not making a tremendous effort to completely block out the blue, and particularly on the shotgun, at the end of it you'll still see the blue undercarriage, as it were, shining through. And likewise, even on some of these the tools around his apron there. And likewise the buttons, you can see I'm just going in from the top, not bothered about completely covering up that blue. I think the effect works really well. Really happy with that. And now it's our saving grace going in with Agrac's Earthshade. Now, in the past I've used Nuln Oil. I find Nuln Oil to be quite dark, and I found actually Agrac's Earthshade to be that bit more forgiving. It adds enough of the shade, but enough in keeping with the appropriate sort of tonal qualities and hues of the rest of the miniature, that it kind of gives it that almost that dirtiness, but really helps those details to pop, which is what it's all about at the end of the day. And then particularly just going in heavy around those, so any areas where I've gone over slightly with the blue, with the silver and the metal, yeah, just going in heavy around those edges helps just to cover all that up. And yeah, just works fantastically. And then of course, yeah, thinking about some of the so where these pants are, just thinking, yeah, so the insides of the legs, they're going to be darker because just where the light would shine, etc. So trying to capture some of that stuff there, just help bring that to life. Like I say, just adds that extra bit of depth. And then likewise, just going around where you've got that, wanting that extra differentiation in the hands, particularly between the hands and the metal. Yeah, just really wanting that to pop, and that's it. So there we go. So now we've got it just on a spinner. So there he is in front of his playing card on the reverse side. So there's his charge ability there. And then I've got a few more seconds after this with him with just a plain black background, just again giving you a slightly different quality on the look, with the starker background. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed and valued the video. I'll put a list of the colours that I've used in the description below. If you have valued this video, then please do give me a like, throw a comment below, let me know you're enjoying this. If you'd like to see more of the Zombicide Undead or Alive survivors being painted in this way, you know, again, please let me know, show your support, hit that subscribe button. That lets me know that you're interested, and hopefully I'll bring some more to you and get a bit better grips with the camera work. Alright, thanks for watching if you got this far. Cheers family, bye.